Wow, I just asked a bunch of questions and realized I was set to the wrong microphone. So sorry for all of you checking your mute buttons. Sorry about that. I was just saying, anyone watch the Apple event? Anyone have any reactions or thoughts?
A 15-inch MacBook Air doesn't make sense to me. Vision Pro seems pretty cool.
I think the Air makes more sense at like a lower price point for a bigger screen. What never made sense to me was the 13-inch Pro having the same exact processor and then only being
yes,
like $100 more, and then not having really any value to it. So I do think there's a spot for the 15-inch for the people who just want a bigger screen, but don't want a huge price upgrade and want the baseline specs.
Well, only reason I said that is coming from someone that worked from there. It's like, I don't know. I guess for some people, they'll be perfectly fine with having an Apple computer that's 15 inches that doesn't say Pro. That, you know what I'm saying? My biggest thing is like it's gonna be like a weird like price point because it's gonna be high enough that it's gonna like make people. It's gonna be at that point of people are gonna be kind of like, all right, well, why shouldn't I just get a Pro at that point? Because the Pro right now currently is 14.5 inches, so you're not really losing much in terms of screen real estate, but you're getting HDMI, 4 USB-C, 16 gigabytes of RAM. So I'm like, I think it's kind of just a kind of push people towards that realm, honestly.
But you're going up to the 14-inch MacBook Pro starts at $2,000. So you're talking about what, a $700 difference there?
True.
So,
but I saw people come in all the time and get a MacBook Air, get 16 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte because they were trying to save money, not get a Pro. And I'm like, dude, that like you're getting twice the amount of computing power. But I don't know, it's a double-edged sword. I think it's a good idea for people that want that larger screen and don't need more power. But I feel like a lot of people that want the larger screen and want that power are going to try to compensate with that. And I feel like it's not going to like work out for those pro users.
yeah, I think and it's important to think about this. The reason why I spend class time discussing this is it's important to think about my friend is a developer at Square and well, now Block, but when she got her laptop, it was an Intel, like one of the last generation Intel laptops, and all of the other teams were getting new M1s or M2 processors, and it actually ate into her development time because it took longer to compile code, it took longer to be able to start up the servers and run different projects and do stuff like that. And turns out that, you know, all she did was say, look, I'm losing like 15 minutes a day just waiting for my code to compile. If you look at my salary and look at how much 15 minutes costs me over
Doesn't
the
seem a lot, but it adds up, dude.
exactly. And so a lot of companies will actually spend a lot more on a computer than what you're used to is spending as a consumer, because, you know, one of the most expensive costs for most businesses are their engineers. And so that's a nice thing to think about is when you do start your career, think about the kind of the benefits that you're getting outside of just salary. You know, time off, health insurance, 401k, all of that stuff's important. But as a developer, oftentimes you will get a laptop provided to you to do your work on, just like you do throughout this program. And we make sure that we get you guys the latest technology for as students as well, right? You guys all should have, I believe, the M2 models. There may be a couple M1 models hanging around, but that processor makes a huge difference. And when Apple came out with that, what, 2.5 years ago at this point, it was a big deal to switch away from Intel and get so much processing power. And it's kind of cool. I think that this new Apple Vision product, if you guys aren't familiar or didn't see the headlines yet,
Vision is cool.
it is Apple's attempt at virtual and augmented reality. And they are definitely late to the game, right? Oculus has models out that have been out for a while, but they've kind of been a flop. And because of that, you see massive layoffs at Facebook Meta, and you see stock prices diving and stuff like that. Now, this is Apple's attempt, but it's kind of cool what Apple did here. They said, we aren't going to put this on sale until the beginning of next year. You're thinking, well, it's only June. That's 7-8 months away from them actually selling anything here. But what's kind of cool is that they announced this at, they call it the WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference. And the idea is, hey, this is a new technology. We want to support our developers. And so what they do is they announce it now and they give you all the specs of it and they open that up for developers. And then you guys, if you decide to go into mobile development, or now what is this new emerging field of virtual reality development, which, believe it or not, you will be somewhat qualified to do by the end of this program. All those concepts of loops and syntax and functions and variables and all of that is directly applicable to mobile development and, by extension, virtual reality development as well. And so they release it. They released it today. They don't put it on sale for at least another 6 months, but it is a whole new field that has opened up that will definitely be growing. Unfortunately, the price point is a little prohibitive, but this is first generation of the technology. And I think the decision that Apple made here was, well, we could release it and it could be a complete flop, or we could release a higher end version with more processing power, more cameras, more a bunch of stuff. And because of that, I think it's going to be more of a success. But personally, my take on it is it's either going to be an Apple Newton or it's going to be an iPhone, right? It's either going to revolutionize smartphones and
It gives me AirPod Max vibes.
It is definitely AirPods Max, but they learned a lot of lessons between the Max and now what's available in the Pro at half the price point, right? And so it will be interesting to see if they came right out of the gate and called it the Vision Pro. Well, there is no regular Vision, there's no Vision S or anything like that. And so I think the price point will come down over the next couple years, but it is certainly a space to watch out for. And if you like doing graphic design, virtual reality and augmented reality, two things that you could think about at graduation, looking into, not saying you need to go out and spend $3,500. Good thing is that this won't even be ready at graduation, but it is a new emerging field and something to think about if you're a visual person. Really cool artistry that you can combine with development skills to make something cool.
Max.
Yes.
During WWDC, what interests you the most? For me, it was the Vision operating system and the Optic ID, of course, with the whole retinal scan and whatnot. How do you feel about that? I have my own opinion, but I want to know what you think.
So Vision definitely has me most excited. I think all of the iPad and macOS and iOS updates are kind of incremental, typical Apple. It's funny, I actually bought an NFC tag for the back of my phone today, so that when I'm at a meetup, someone can just tap my phone and get a virtual business card. And of course, like 2 hours after that package arrived, Apple announces today that you will now be able to tap your iPhone to someone else's iPhone and it will transfer all the contact details. And I'm like, great timing. We're just going to build all of that from scratch. And now in 3 months, everyone will have that feature. I think really cool technology. I think it is important as a developer to watch events like that. Of course, I'm an Apple fanboy, so I don't really watch the Google events. I wait for CNET to do Google in 10 minutes or 15 minutes and then just watch that summary. But for Apple, because I am an Apple fanboy, I watch that space very closely. And there have been things that they have released that have directly impacted apps that I've built at my startup company, right? Or the startup company I work for, I should say. So I think that it is important, and the CEO of our company made fun of us for for watching them and taking two hours out of our workday.
It was more
But
than that, yeah.
at the end of the day, there are features that they are releasing that we need to plan for in the next year or two to implement in our own apps, because at a certain point they become standards. And no, not everyone is going to have Vision Pro on their doorstep early next year, right? That's going to be a technology in the making. But it's very similar to EVs, right? EVs were not feasible 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And then they were, but they cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then they became a little bit more feasible and the cost came down, the technology got better. And now we're at the point where you can actually buy a Tesla for the average US car sales price, which is pretty crazy to think about. Granted, that's with a $7,500 tax credit, but still pretty nuts that you can buy an EV when 10 years ago, that car would have cost about 3 times as much. So Vision definitely has me the most excited. I think that the optic scan is just the next evolution of, hey, we can't do Face ID because Face ID uses a technology called Romeo and Juliet, where Romeo sends out infrared dots, and then Juliet reads those infrared dots and how far away they are to get depth, which is why you can't just take a picture of someone and hold it up to their iPhone and have it unlock. It's because of that depth there. And Natasha, that is something that actually Face ID uses machine learning over time. And so as your face changes, it will actually learn what you look like when you're wearing makeup and when you're not wearing makeup. It will look at like contouring makeup doesn't really throw it off because it's actually using the depth information, not necessarily the lighting information. But that is something that Apple ran into of, well, what happens when you buy a new pair of glasses? Should it still work? Well, it did until everyone started wearing masks, and then Apple had to go back and redo their entire algorithm to read the information above your mask, take additional data points, and now the iPhone supports unlock when you're wearing a mask. So technology has to keep up with the times, and that is one of them where Apple has evolved themselves multiple times, right? It was fingerprint readers until the screen real estate became too expensive, and the problem with the under-screen fingerprint readers were they weren't as accurate. They were easier to trick it. And so instead of Apple investing money in a technology that wasn't quite ready, they invested the money in Face ID, and now Face ID is the dominant thing. Well, here we come again. We can't do Face ID with that headset on because it can't read the entire information in your face, right? But they already have to do a ton of eye tracking information because the Vision Pro is getting rid of the mouse, right? There is no input controller. It's literally wherever you're looking is where your cursor is going to be when you click. And so Apple said, all right, if we're going to invest all of that money in eye tracking, we might as well be able to use your eye to do a scan. And who knows, in 10 years from now, we may look back on Face ID and fingerprint ID and think, man, how trivial was that? Look at how much better security we have now with eye scanning.
Actually, Max, I was referring to the unfortunate trend of plastic surgery. It's like everybody's getting everything done over all the time, and I don't know who's real and who's fake, and maybe Apple can tell us, but I can't figure it out.
Yeah, I don't think many people are going to be doing eye changes. So I think that
But
that's
you can legit change your eye color. You can get eyeball tattoos, all kind of crazy stuff.
Yep. So it will be interesting. I think it's the right move for Apple to make in terms of security, and I think it's very important. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have a fingerprint reader on our Mac, right? Or if we did, that would be a newer piece of technology that we would have to buy and spend a couple $100s on. And now everything is has a fingerprint reader on it for Touch ID. So I do think that optic is the next evolution, and that the hardware just happens to be able to support it because of all the eye tracking they have to do. And it is, Apple doesn't like to call it artificial intelligence. What you hear Apple saying a lot is machine learning, or ML. Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. And it's basically like you heard them say predictive text, right, on the keyboard. And they're using a machine learning algorithm so that as you're literally typing every single letter, it's learning how you type, it's learning the thickness of your finger, it's learning what word, literally what the next letter is that you're about to type. That is all a subset of artificial intelligence, but Apple doesn't like to go overboard with that marketing because it's a buzzword. So instead, you'll hear Apple call it predictive text, which is the name of the feature, and they will say machine learning as well. And that is technically AI. It's just not the way that Apple chooses to market it. And I think it's worthwhile of saying, well, it may be more intrusive, but it also may be more freeing, right? I can't teach without an external monitor, right? And whenever I travel, if I'm trying to teach, I have all of this equipment that I need to take with me, right? If I had that Vision Pro, that would be one piece of hardware that I would be able to teach and literally have you guys up in one virtual space and my code up in another, the chat open, all of that. So yes, the $3,500 price tag is insane, but I do think that that will come down over time. And I think Apple did the right thing of not cutting that price in half and getting more people to use a crappier experience. Apple went all out on near top of the line. And because of that, I think that the technology will evolve and go from there. I do see the future with that, Kenny. I believe Vision Pro is the future. Maybe I can't see what's in the future, but I know that
I
that's
do
part
agree
of
with
it.
you on that. Because it's think back to the iPhone 10. I mean, technically, for iPhone, we hadn't seen anything like that, nor had we seen $1,000 iPhone up until base price iPhone to that point. So
Yeah, absolutely. You know, technology evolves and it gets more expensive as new technology comes out, and then it gets cheaper and it gets cheaper and cheaper, and to the point where, you know, a lot of people have iPhones now and we don't look at it as this crazy $1,000 expense, but kind of part of being in our society, right? And that happens. We have equipment at the startup that we bought because we had to test on Android. And even though we're all Apple, an all Apple company, and provide our employees Apple laptops, we can't ignore Android, right? There are a huge number of users that use Android. And so that's hardware that we had to invest in just so that we could test on Android and make sure the app worked almost as well as it did on Apple. And a little sidetrack for you there, if you're interested in mobile app development, after we finish the React module, which we will be doing right after our 4th of July break, there is a framework called React Native, and it is a little similar syntax to React. It still uses JSX, but it is a way to build native mobile applications using React code. So a lot of graduates after the program decide that they're interested in mobile app development, and then React Native is the framework that they learn there. I don't think you can get a Pro Max for $899, Rain, at least not without a promotional price.
That is what they said during the conference. I want to say at about 3 hours in. Yeah.
Sorry, you said 13. I was thinking 14. Yeah.
I
yep.
spent over $1,000 on my 13 Pro Max, and on the conference they said the 14 Pro Max was $899 and the 14 was $799.
Yeah, it usually comes down $100 every year. And this year may be coming down even more. But that's the price you pay for new technology. Goggin,
I think the prices of phones are going to go up again this year.
They might. We'll see in September or October, but probably September. I don't think they will, but I could be wrong about that. They very well might, or they might sneak in like a $50 bump this year instead of a full 100. But we'll see.
I had a question about React Native. Is it like based on JavaScript?
It is using JSX, which is the same language that React for the web uses. Basically, what React Native does is allows you to write your entire application in JSX, and then when you build it or compile it, it takes that JSX and translates it. It's called transpiling. It translates it to native Swift and Java, which are the languages that Android and iOS use, and a little bit of Objective-C because that's the older iOS language that I think of parts of React Native are still using. But yeah, basically what React Native is a translator, right? You build the entire app in React Native, and then when you go to ship the app on the App Store or the Google Play Store, it converts that to the native code language, which is supposed to make performance better of your application because it's running the native code as opposed to like a website that just happens to be showing up like an app. Which some older frameworks like Ionic and Cordova and PhoneGap do.
Nice.
Palash, take your Android and go home. Just kidding. Android's a great platform, and there are a ton of features that Android pioneered first that Apple has since, I don't want to say copied on, but used inspiration from. So there are definitely values to the Android app operating system. You'll just never see me having a non-Apple device in my pocket.
I will say iOS 17 was a letdown though.
Yeah, no major features. The PDF filler, and I think that's going to be long overdue. I'm glad that they're finally.
I should have had
bringing
that
out.
5 years ago.
Yeah, I was really disappointing that they haven't done that sooner, but that's going to be cool. I don't think the journal app's going to be anything amazing. For people who use it, that will be great, but I don't think that that's like, a giant feature.
That is intrusive to me. Writing all my feelings and emotions and life stuff down to be saved in the cloud and stored somewhere. No.
They have like the main thing I saw that they updated were the widgets, and they had like a mental health one, and now they want to know like women's ovulation and our menstruation. I'm like, okay, this is a bit much.
To be fair, it's all encrypted, so Apple can't read any of that data, which you would not get from if Google made that product. Google still does not offer end-to-end encryption of all of their cloud services. Apple is the only company that I know of that is offering end-to-end encryption at that level or that scale.
Google is coming with the new end-to-end encryption, like for the whole cloud. That's what they promised, I think.
Yeah, that's what they promised. Important to remember that while Apple is a technology company, Google is not. Apple makes all of their money from selling hardware and services. Where does Google make the vast majority of their money? Not in licensing Android, not in software that they sell, in advertising.
Data?
That's
advertising, which is data power.
Google Analytics, yeah.
Yep. The reason why their advertising makes so much money is their data. They have more data on you and your web searches and what websites you're going to. The entire context of your Gmail is scanned by machine learning algorithms. Every video that you watch on YouTube is tracked. If you ever open up your YouTube and then someone else's YouTube and compare the home pages, the videos that you will see will be very, very different. Because you're signed into your Google account and it's tracking all of that activity. So I remind people frequently that yes, while Google makes money from technology, the real source of their main revenue is advertising. It is not technology. It just so happens that the technology is what empowers them to be such good advertisers.
That's why Google phone has always freaked me out. I'm like, I don't know how people can use a Google phone.
Yeah, they got access to OS level And now Apple is pushing privacy, and Google has tried to compete because they know they can't just ignore what the other major player is doing. But that is very counter to their revenue model. And because of that, we'll see what they do. They have released more encryption features, but nowhere near the end-to-end encryption. They de-identify and anonymize data a little bit more now, but still a major problem. I don't work for Apple because I don't like working for big companies. Basically what it boils down to. I love being in a startup. I love wearing multiple hats. I love continually learning new things. And that's something for you guys to all consider when you start your careers, right? Of working at a startup is great, but it can be very stressful, very long hours. There are times where I'm like, man, really be nice if we had a DevOps engineer that I could pass this on to. But no, when I'm done making a feature, now I take that developer hat off and put on the DevOps hat and have to go through all of that. And when shit hits the fan and, you know, servers go down, there is no, oh, let's call the on-call person. I am the on-call person, right? So there's a lot to think about in working in a smaller company versus a medium or larger size company. There are certainly benefits to working in a larger size company in terms of mentorship and company structure, stability with a paycheck, lots of factors to think on what size company you're going into. And no matter what size company you're going into, I suggest that everyone in an interview ask about the team dynamics and saying, well, what kind of team would I be working on? It doesn't matter if you're in a 5-person company or a 50,000 person company, you're always going to have a team of, let's say, 2 to 15 people that you'll be working with, and knowing kind of what that looks like is really important for your 9 to 5, right? Hey, am I working with a quality assurance person, or am I going to be responsible for my own testing? Am I going to have a DevOps team behind me where I can hand that off and they can deploy it? Hey, how many senior developers are on your team versus junior developers? That ratio may be very important. If there are 5 junior developers and only 1 senior developer, could be very hard to get some of their time and mentorship. So all very important questions to ask and think about. And sometimes you don't really know until you work at one. And once you work at one for a couple of years, then it becomes much easier to know what you're looking for to try something different.
I just
Being
thought,
the heroes is not always what it's meant out to be, man.
you
I
just,
applied to Apple for 4 years straight. What?
sorry.
And every company has different reputations, and some of that is dependent on the immediate team that you're on. But unfortunately, company culture sometimes can be poisoned. And because of that, different companies get different reputations for how they treat their engineers or their other employees. Apple has a reputation for looking down on retail employees, which is unfortunate because 15 years ago, that was not the case. When Apple started retail, because Steve Jobs was pushing for it, retail members were considered part of the team and a natural source of hiring talent. And unfortunately, that has changed over the years, and retail employees are treated more like retail traditionally is. So all kind of important factors to think about. Brandy, they do have they're partnering with Zeiss, which is a lens optical company where you can get magnetic inserts that like pop in and will essentially be lenses for the Vision Pro. I am hoping that there's like a little footnote that says all prescriptions will not be compatible, and I am on the border of legally blind, completely correctable with my glasses, but right on that borderline. And so I am like going to be devastated if they're like, oh no, you can only go up to like a -4 prescription, and I'm like 4 3/4. But they haven't released any details on that yet. So if I come into class or some open hack sobbing, it is because my prescription will be like right on the other line of what they can put into the headset.
Mine's almost 4 too. So
Yeah, whenever I order
Yikes.
glasses, they're like, "Oh, do you want the thinner ones or the?" And then they look at my prescription and they're like, "Oh no, you have to get the thinner ones. The thicker ones are gonna like fall off your face for being so heavy." So, yeah, back in the day, I couldn't even get contacts because they would be so thick they
Yikes.
would actually pinch my eyeball, and so I couldn't get contacts. So, yeah, I've been wearing glasses since I was 6. I've spent more of my life with glasses
Oh,
on my
God.
face than off my face.
Yeah, I've had them since like I was, I think, 9 or 10, so I get it.
I've
Yes.
had glasses for so long. I used to have the red frame glasses, if anyone remember those. No? Okay, I feel old, never mind. Do you guys remember the red ones? No? Yep, okay.
I remember Rain.
And Natasha, I love teaching, right? Like that is definitely something where I'm looking to, down the road for my career, also be able to scale that, be able to get more teachers, trained to teach the way that I teach. But I would be a terrible college professor. I would be a terrible middle school teacher, right? Like if I make you guys cry, that means I'm doing my boot camp job right. Like I take that as a win. So it isn't about, oh, I want to take pity on entry level developers. I want more people in the field. I want more people to realize that this isn't about being smart enough to be an engineer. This is about the perseverance to learn hard concepts and then to get real world experience so they can jumpstart their careers, right? That's the whole reason that I'm teaching at a boot camp and wouldn't be teaching at a college, right? To me, it's more important that you guys are getting the skills and the experience to start your jobs than it is to say, hey, this is an accredited curriculum. That accredited curriculum was probably made 30 years ago and has only had minor changes to it since. And so that's one thing that I really like about my job is being able to mix, hey, I wrote code today, right? Like I was in there, I wrote like 400 lines of code today. But because I have that experience, I am then able to go into class and be able to say, hey, when I'm teaching you this stuff, I can be confident because I'm the one getting paid to do it, right? On the flip side of it. And so that's one of my favorite things about Hack Upstate and the startup that I work with is that I can flex my hours in a way that I can do both positions and know that you guys are getting taught the latest and the greatest without, 30 years of curriculum bloat to get in the way.
Well, I appreciate your dedication to the craft and cultivating a new generation of coders because you, sir, could easily be halfway across the world on your yacht coding for, I don't know, Google.
Not yet. Not making that kind of money. Not at that point in my career.
I
but
really appreciate it. Thank you so
give me a
much.
couple years and maybe I'll be tuning in from the yacht.
Nice. I mean, you did the island last week. Why not the yacht?
Yeah, got lucky with my parents there. They bought a house in the 80s, much more affordable than what it was now. And they got lucky on that investment. Let's just leave it like that. Corin, what's up?
All right, last Apple question. Now, if someone gave you the choice, right? To let you spec out any of their computers, their pro computers, right? Are you going Mac Pro or are you going Mac Studio?
Oh, I'm going Mac Pro. And honestly, I just had that conversation with my boss today. I said, if the SoCs were upgradable, basically the processors and the RAMs, I would
Within the studio?
I would in the Pro, I would seriously consider getting it. Only because I know there are people who still have like their Mac G5 towers and they hold on to it because they were able to upgrade it like over the years so much.
That's the biggest thing I've heard.
And
Can't
so
let go of the trash can, man.
If video processing wasn't such a huge jump up on the Apple Silicon, like I would consider it.
It's like, isn't it like a $5,000 jump?
It's insane.
Yeah, dude.
To be completely transparent with you guys, I have the M1 Max. I paid for that out of pocket. I think it's a $3,500 computer, but it's a really tough pill to swallow until you realize I held on to my last Mac for 7 years. And so if you think about, I use this computer probably 330 days out of the year. So if you talk about the number of hours that I spend on this computer, you get down to like cents an hour that I'm paying for it, right? So that's one of those things where, yes, $3,500 on a computer is an outrageous amount to spend. But if that computer is lasting me 6 or 7 years, there's no way a PC at a similar price point would last me that long. So that's the only reason I would consider the Pro. But if you're looking at the increase in power between the either the Studio or the Pro, the M2 Max or Ultra compared to what I have right now, I won't have the need to upgrade for another 4 or 5 years. And when that time comes, that's when I'll assess and say, hey, am I teaching in person? Am I going to meetups where I need my laptop? You know, I'll assess at that point. But 5 years from now, that could be a very different story with vision and, you know, looking at it that way. So we'll see. The industry is always changing. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to have a laptop anywhere near powerful enough, and I would have been forced to make a desktop call. So a desktop computer isn't the right fit for me, but I do think it is important to consider it because you could get a lot more power out of a desktop, out of a Studio or a Pro than you could out of a laptop.
I agree. I mean, because when you think about where the chips are right now, I mean, even the M1 Max is comparable to a base level trash can from back in the day. Sorry, tower.
If you guys don't know, Apple came out with like a Mac Pro 5-ish years ago, and everyone called it the trash can because it literally looked like a little bathroom trash can. And they talked this like big game about having a thermal management system, and they built this whole like
It was trash.
The
The thermal system was kind of booty. Not gonna lie.
yeah, the trash can name was
It's rated
unfortunately
everybody.
well deserved because processor wise it was pretty terrible. So fortunately better today. But Goggins, do you have a question?
Yes, I was surprised that you don't have your YouTube channel or something like that, because teaching like it's really good.
So all of our videos go up on YouTube. I actually had students last cohort say, hey, all of the resources you share are great, but I would really love a textbook. And I was like, oh, well, I could write a textbook, like why not? And so there's definitely opportunity there. We also have kicked around this idea of creating an agency or a dev shop, where we take kind of top third of the graduates and have people come to us and say, hey, I want to build this app, but I can't afford a full-time dev shop to make it. And so what we would be able to do is have you guys as graduates say, hey, I'm junior developers, I need experience. I'll build that app for a little bit cheaper, but still have the support network of Hack Upstate or of a senior developer. And so that is another idea that has been kicked around, nothing formalized there, but there is a lot of potential. But for now, yeah, we're happy posting the videos on YouTube, and who knows, down the road, we've talked about doing something like Wes Bose does, or Wes Boss, forget how he pronounces it.
That's a good idea.
Where, you know, we can pre-record the videos. We do have a couple students every cohort that unfortunately the boot camp is a little too fast for them, but they keep on watching the YouTube videos maybe at a little slower of a pace, and they get through the whole program in a year or a year and a half. Which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? This boot camp is not for everyone. We do go very quickly, but there's the potential to say, hey, I still want to do this. I still need mentorship or help, but I want to go through it a little bit slower. So that is another idea that we have floated around of, hey, is there some way to do this asynchronously? So lots of ideas there. A lot of it comes down to show me the money, right? Show me a client who is willing to come in and pay for that work, or you know, hey, we need some funding source that is going to allow us to record all of those videos, so that becomes an option. So we are looking into offering tuition. We've got another cohort of AEI funding. And then after that, that is the nature of grant funding, is you get the money, you spend the money runs out, and then you got to go find it again. And sometimes that grant is available and sometimes it isn't. And so that is the nature of a startup, right? Hack Upstate, small company, couple contractors, Jesse on staff, me at a near full-time role. But that is the nature of grant work and working at a startup is, yeah, it's fun and it's exciting, but there is always there's always that, where's the money coming in and how steady of a stream is that? And at smaller companies, that becomes more of a risk. I'm probably a terrible person to talk to about that because I've started 3 companies of my own, and I've built my own apps, and I've been at a startup for 7 years, and we have run out of money, and I have had to go off payroll, and now starting today, actually, I'm back on payroll there. So there is a ton of flex in a startup, and that is not for everyone. But there are also great opportunities for getting exposed to more concepts because you're doing more things, and the ability to move up the career ladder often is quicker at a startup than it is at a more traditional company, just because you're being exposed to more things. So all things to think about when you are starting your career. Grit and tenacity. I say my 3 most important skills for not only me, but any software developer. Communication is always number 1. If you cannot effectively communicate, especially technical concepts to non-technical people, you're not going to be good at your job. Communication is a skill. It is not a talent, meaning it is something that you can learn and get better at. So communication is very important. Perseverance is very important. There will be days that you spend 8 hours on your code and still have the same error message or have a different error message. There are days that I've spent I spent 2.5 weeks is my longest run, where I worked on this project for 2.5 weeks and ended up deleting it all and not using a single line of it, because sometimes you got to look into feasibility and seeing if that technology is ready, or if you're willing to invest a 9-month development cycle on it. So 2.5 weeks of losing all of that work is very easy to go, oh my God, I just wasted 2.5 weeks on that. Well, no, you didn't. You spent 2.5 weeks realizing that if you continue down that path, it would be an even bigger mistake that you would be paying for in the long term. So communication, perseverance, and there's a third one that I'm completely blanking on. Blanking on it. Maybe it'll come to me at 2 a.m. and I'll send you all a Slack message. But yes.
Related to what you're talking about before we began, you know, I really wish I had an innovative idea for a tech startup, because yes, there are a lot of grants and sponsorships behind them. Would you, with working with a private sector tech startup, would you say it's more rewarding, or your position means more than working for a public sector group? You know, whereas I guess they're more expendable. That's why a lot of people are laid off. Would you agree with that statement?
It depends, right? I think the stress of a startup is not for everyone. The way that I try and, you know, explain it is, well, we have users that come to us and say, hey, this feature is broken. And within 15 minutes, I can have that fix out there. They're using it and their life is better, right? And I can hear that feedback immediately from the customer and have an impact. Compare that to Apple, where a customer may come to you and say, hey, that period isn't as round as it needs to be. And because of that one little pixel that's off on that period, it causes an accessibility problem. Well, it may take you 15 minutes to fix it, but there are going to be 500 people involved in the testing of that, in the management of the release, in all of this stuff to get it to iOS 16.5.1 or whatever it is, right? That change that you make may take 9 months for it to make it out into the public. But when it does make it out into the public, that is literally getting installed on 500 million active phones. So that one line of code that you changed, or that one little pixel that you edited, is now impacting 500 million people around the globe. So which do you prefer, right? And obviously there's a lot more nuance that goes into that. But you know, my friend mentioned to me, she said, well, would you ever want to be an electrician? And I thought, no, while it could be interesting work, I don't really want to be installing light switches at people's houses and doing smaller jobs. And she said, well, one of my friends was the head electrician at San Francisco Airport's new terminal. And so think about how many millions of people a year go through there. And because of that, they're all benefiting from all the electrical work that he did. And I was like, oh, well, I never really thought about the scale that you're working on. So I think startups are great if you like wearing multiple hats. And what I mean by that is, do you like being the salesperson trying to get the customers to sign up or use your app? Do you like being the person who's monitoring the billing and chasing down people when that money isn't coming in? Do you like being the developer who is not only coding it out, but also the designer who's figuring out the app and figuring out the requirements? Do you like being the customer service person when the app isn't working, that you're communicating with them? Do you like being the person who has to put all of that on pause because there's another grant that you have to apply for that you might not get? Do you like being there's so many sides to a startup that when you are a solo entrepreneur, and there are a lot of statistics that show that when you have a partner, entrepreneurial ventures are much more successful when it's not just one person working on them. But ultimately, that's where all of my startups that I did in college fizzled out. Was I didn't want to be the salesperson. I didn't really want to be front facing. I wanted to just make the app and make the app better. And when I had to go out and sell it and manage all of the funding sources, that's where I was like, nah, that's not really what I'm interested in doing. Now, if I had a partner in college who was managing more of the business side of things and let me focus on the technology side of things, that would be very different. And you guys will be in a minority. There are a lot more business people looking for tech people than there are tech people looking for business people. So that is definitely something to consider. That answer your question?
Yeah,
Sorry for the long answer.
no, it's good.
We love it.
So I did in college, I thought it was really dumb that they passed around an attendance sheet on a clipboard, especially when there were 250 people in the class and like one person wouldn't know it was sitting next to them. Then there would be a mad rush to like sign in before they left the lecture hall. Thought that was really dumb that I was getting a degree in IT and we were passing around a piece of paper to sign in. And so I built an app using something called iBeacons, which are like Bluetooth low energy, that basically allowed you to get GPS-like precision within a couple 100-foot radius. So you would actually be able to know if the student was on the other side of the classroom door or within like 5 feet. And so the idea was that the instructor would have this little thing in their briefcase or their purse or whatever. And then the students would be able to open up their app and be able to check in. And so that was actually the second iteration. The first iteration, I took these Raspberry Pi computers, which at the time were these cheap 35 little dollar computers. It automatically connected to the Wi-Fi, and basically students would be able to swipe their IDs in, and just like you would get it like the dining hall or something like that, you could track all the attendance by swiping IDs. And then the beacons was the second iteration of that, where I integrated it with Touch ID. So you couldn't take your friend's phone and check in for them. But that was my first idea. And then the other idea was kind of similar. I thought it was really dumb that when you were living in a dorm, they would take all of the packages that would come in and they would like hand write like the 25-digit tracking number on another clipboard. And so I basically built an app that allowed them to use an iPod Touch to scan the barcode. It would automatically read the mailbox information and send an email to the recipient saying you have a package ready for pickup. And then there was a whole database that powered that. So I can tell you that our curriculum is the exact way that I learned all this stuff. I learned how to make a web page and then said, all right, how can multiple people use this web page? I learned SQL and I learned about a database. And then I was like, well, how do I connect the database to the website? And I learned that you had to learn a server-side language. So I learned a server-side language. Then I thought I had it all figured out and then realized that I didn't know how to make a mobile app. And so I went out and learned Objective-C at the time, and took some community college courses and learned how to do that. So the curriculum that you guys are learning, a little bit better organized, a little bit more project oriented than I had the pleasure of learning. But I went through that same career path a little over 10 years ago now, of learning all of those technologies piece by piece to be able to build what you guys are building in your capstone. And while it is certainly not a requirement, it is certainly something you can consider after graduation is, hey, I've got this capstone and I've got this great starting point. What's it take to monetize this, or what's it take to turn this into a business? And that's something you can definitely do. And yes, Amberland, there's a lot of people who are using that location technology now. So kind of cool to see it. I was in a college hall and they were still passing around a piece of paper 10 years after I made that app. And I just got a chuckle out of that. All right, any other rants or tangents I can go on for you guys tonight before we get into our code? I'm sure I'm boring some of you. Flash, what's up?
So you said before that you are also an entrepreneur, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but once we're done with the code and we get better at coding, and you said more business people are looking for tech people, like how do you bridge that gap? Or have you met any techies that became business people, or vice versa? Like, do they get formal education, or do they just...
Absolutely. I had networking is the answer to that question, right? So I became friends with one of the people involved in the Syracuse University entrepreneurial scene, still connected to them today. And I got an email introduction today that said, hey, I've got someone in the who's on the business side, and they're not a coding person, but they need to now hire a whole technical team. Can you give them some advice? Great. Calendly link goes out. He booked me 8:30 tomorrow morning, right? Like it really usually comes down to networking. There are 3 events coming up that actually was on my list to talk about tonight. One on Wednesday, there is an event called Community Cup down at the Tech Garden. That's the first and third Wednesday of every month, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. A lot like Open Hack, except a little different audience, completely free to attend. More entrepreneurial minded people there. You'll find everyone from people looking to do business because they run a recruiting company and they're looking for companies that are hiring, all the way to, other developers that are there that are contract based, or people who just want to be connected to the community. So that's a great event. And once you get networked there will be people who are like, oh, wait, I talked to someone last week. I met Max last week. Let me introduce you to him. I think, you know, he could be of help there. So that is one event. If you guys can make it, that is a great one to attend. And they don't serve shitty coffee, which is lovely. I have a very high threshold, so it is called Community Cup for a reason. So that's one event coming up. The other event is on Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday. There is Open Co-working Day. I know a lot of you guys have Common Space memberships, but this is open to everyone. I will be headed there after Community Cup, and I'll be working out of Common Space for the day. That is organized by Jay, who will be coming in as a guest speaker in a couple weeks. Actually, might be this month. So you can attend that. That's a great way to network. Same kind of community group at Syracuse IO, but that can be a great way to learn. And then the third thing is Open Hack on this Thursday. So we do not have class on Thursday. I probably should have mentioned that in the first hour of class instead of where we're at now. But no class on Thursday, encouraging you guys to attend Open Hack. If you cannot attend Open Hack, I highly am recommending, not requiring, but highly recommending you use that time on Free Code Camp, going through Free Code Camp's curriculum. You don't have to do every one of the challenges, but looking at where you're struggling, what skills you need to reinforce. Free Code Camp can be a great way to do that. If you hate Free Code Camp with a passion, you can also check out the Odin project, ODIN. That can be another great way to learn those similar skills. But highly encouraging you guys to go to Open Hack. And if you're at Open Hack and are not socializing, that can be a great time to work on Free Code Camp or Odin Project while you're at Common Space. Sometimes the most important thing for getting out of your own head is actually getting out of your own house, right? And so Open Hack can be a great excuse to do that. So Wednesday, Community Cup, 9 a.m. Wednesday throughout the whole day is the co-working day. And then around lunchtime, I'm guessing sometime around 12, there is a lunch and learn at TCG Player. They are hosting an office tour, and then they will also have more information about hiring and stuff like that. So if you are interested in TCG Player, they have an awesome office. They are the ones that have a pirate ship as kind of their lobby that they have built, and all of their rooms are very nerdy themed. So they've got like a Star Wars room and a Harry Potter room and stuff like that. So that will be a cool opportunity, and lunch is free to tour TCG Player. And then Thursday, we will be at Open Hack, 6 p.m. And I will be there if you have questions and all of that kind of stuff. And then the following Thursday is the Rock on Tech. If you have not signed up for carpooling, check out that channel in Slack, sign up for carpooling so we can save rides and a little bit of gas there. But those are all upcoming events, and that, Palash, very long answer to your question, is the number one way that I have found is that there's no matchmaking site. There used to be something called AngelList. They rebranded to WellFound, I believe. But AngelList used to be more startup focused, and that could be a great way if you were looking for a job or looking for a CTO or a business person. A lot of job postings on their site go through there. So if I were in the job market, WellFound would be the place that I would go. But just networking is really important in the startup space because in Syracuse, everyone knows everyone. And once you make that first connection or two, it kind of is a big spark from there. That same friend that I am now connected with is down in the Richmond, Virginia area. and said that the talent network and the entrepreneurial network down there just does not exist. And there are pockets of networks that don't interface with each other. And so that's the tagline that I am trying to get to catch on in Syracuse, is that it is about collaboration, not competition. And that Erie 21 is connecting Hack Upstate and Center State. And Center State is running the Surge apprenticeship program. And we said, well, we're going to have graduates in September. And they said, all right, we'll start our program up in October, right? So that overlap and that timing is perfect. And so that's what I really like about the Syracuse community, is that it is a little bit smaller, but because it is smaller, it is more reinforced and easier to navigate. So yeah, those little events matter. If you don't have business cards, stipend funds, I believe, are releasing either this Friday or next Friday. You can get business cards printed same day at Staples. Would recommend that you do that, or go to Staples and just buy the paper and put it in your printer if you have it. Or you can order from Vistaprint online. That is a very popular one. They seem to have gotten a little pricier, but if you order a couple hundred business cards at a time, that becomes a little bit cheaper. All really good options. If you do decide to order on Vistaprint, make sure to try a couple different coupon codes, because you can save a good 25% off if you try different codes and go from there. But yes, business cards, very important. Networking, very important. Or you can be like me and buy a 20 pack of NFC stickers and design your own virtual business card. You guys now have the skills to not only do that, but to deploy it as well. So that is another option. Everyone's phones these days have NFC, and you can just tap on that and get all that information. Yes, Panera is a great option. And there is also a lot of great libraries and local coffee shops. If you're a Panera person, their coffee club is worth every penny. Always important to hydrate. And there is a list in Canvas for like local meetup physical locations that you can go to for suggestions on that. And if you guys ever want, we kind of stopped doing office hours because we didn't have great attendance. But if you guys ever want a group meetup or a one-on-one to be in person, just shoot me a message and we can definitely work that out, especially on weekends. We do not have class next Thursday. So 2 Thursdays in a row, we are technically off. This Thursday, we are off for Open Hack at 6 p.m. And then because Rock on Tech is kind of an all-day event, I think it ends at 5:30-ish. Maybe it ends at 5. I'll be in the car. I'll be tired from all the conference stuff. I hope you guys will be tired from all the conference stuff. So we do not have class next Thursday, and I would suggest the same thing that I'm suggesting for this Thursday. If you are not able to attend the conference, work on your JavaScript. JavaScript is not something that you learn overnight. It's not something that you learn in 5 weeks of class time alone. So use Free Code Camp, use the Odin project, study all those resources, use that time off instead. And no big deal if you can't attend the conference. If you are in that Slack channel and current student, which most of you guys are, that means we got you a ticket. I believe there were 10 students and then 11 for me. So we have your tickets there. If you have any questions, there is a dedicated Slack channel. Hit me up in there or hit me up in a direct message and I can answer any questions that you might have. And please, please, please sign up for carpooling, either going in someone else's car or adding your own car if you can take other people over. That will be the biggest logistics that we have to deal with. That is the Rock on Tech 23 channel. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up there. Okay, officially derailed class for an hour and 38 minutes. Any other questions that we might have?
You might as well start because I can ask questions all night.
I do love a good tangent, but I try to cap them off at an hour.
Okay.
Any pressing final questions I should ask? And one of our TAs and graduates of the program uses his his monthly one-on-ones to just set me off on different tangents. So he comes in with a list of about 15 questions and I just spend an hour answering them. So if you are interested in that, use your one-on-ones. I am happy to answer any questions as they come up. It's very hard to put me on the spot and not have let me put it like this. I enjoy being put on the spot and having fun answering those questions. So if you do want to use your one-on-ones for that, you are more than welcome to. Sorry, it is like a gazillion degrees in here, and I know it is nice and cool outside. I had to open a window. Okay. Ready to write some JavaScript? All right. Let me close this, get my screen share fired up. Okay, so tonight we are starting our JavaScript blog. So what we are going to do is think through the requirements a little bit, right? So let's get our code set up and we can document that in that file. So I'm going to head to the C5 My Code. I'm going to make a new folder called week 9. I am going to make a new folder in there called day 1. And I'm going to take my day 1 and pop it open in my VS Code. Hopefully none of this is new for you guys. I'm going to make my index.html and put in my boilerplate with my exclamation point enter. I'm going to call this Max's blog. I am going to go pull in Bootstrap, get bootstrap.com, go to the docs, go to number 2 and copy over my link tag here. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. I am also going to make my style.css. And I'm just going to target the body and make the color red to make sure that is properly linked. We'll start a live share for you all. And Natasha, I think we will have enough drivers so that you don't have to take the van. But that link should have who's able to drive and then open spots available in their car. I will check that link after class tonight. And if we are short drivers or have too many, I'll message the channel. But I think we'll have enough people to drive that it shouldn't be a problem. And whoever signs up for my car gets to ride in a Tesla, just saying. Okay, so back to my index.html. I'm going to throw in my link rel style sheet and my href to the style.css. I'm going to throw my body in with a hello and go live. I want to make sure that I have not only my red hello, but it is in Arial and not in Times New Roman. And finally, I need my script.js. So I'm going to say script.js. I'm going to put in a console log hello world. I'm going to save that. I'm going to go back to my index. I'm going to go down to my body tag and throw in my script, my src to my script.js. I am going to pop open my console in the browser and make sure I have my hello world showing up and I am caught up and good to go. We'll also make sure my live server is shared, so you should be all good there. And I will give you guys a minute to catch up. 3 new files, index.html, script.js, style.css. Style.css gets a body color red, script.js gets a console log hello world, index.html gets our bootstrap link, our style sheet link, hello in the body, and a script tag. And that is the recipe for a basic starter JavaScript project. There's one more minute, and then we will dive in case anyone's still getting files set up. Okay, so oftentimes as developers, we think about our code, right? And we dive right on in. And the problem is that if someone else were to look at this project, they would have no idea what they were looking at or how to use it. So oftentimes you'll do a requirements planning document in a Google Doc or whatever it is. And that's usually something that you either develop with your client or that the client will give to you or your job's going to provide to you, right? Hey, this is the feature we want. And in order to make that feature work, what do we have to build to do that? So there is a common industry practice to create something called a README, right? And that README is something that shows up in GitHub. I know Nathan kind of introduced you guys to that. When you make a new repo, it can create the README for you. And the file extension on here is MD. Does anyone know what MD stands for? MD is for Markdown. So Markdown is like markup. And what other language have we learned that uses markup? HTML, hypertext markup language, right? So the point of the README is that you can get rich text by using plain text. In other words, just like we can make a div go down the page because we're using multiple divs, we're marking up that text. The same thing goes for our markdown. We use special syntax for that in order to make our text more easily readable. It's basically an alternative. It's kind of like if HTML and a Google Doc or a Word doc had a baby, that's the intersection of Markdown. So it's a way that we can quickly style our text while only using plain text. So when we are in our Markdown, we can use a £, and that will give us a header. And if we use 2 £, it's like using an H2, 3 for an H3, all the way down to an H6. So I am going to call this Max's blog, Max's vanilla JS blog. Now, when you hear vanilla, what we mean by that is we're not using any frameworks. We're using Bootstrap, but Bootstrap is technically a CSS framework, right? So we're not using jQuery, which was a very popular JavaScript framework. We're not using React, Angular, or Vue, which are the 3 dominant modern day frameworks. All we're doing is we're saying we are using just plain old vanilla, right? When we say vanilla JavaScript, whatever comes out of the box, whatever we can use in the browser, that's what we mean by vanilla JavaScript. Now I'm going to come down here and I am going to add in 2 £, and I'm going to say requirements. And then I'm going to use a dash and a space, and that's going to show up as a bullet point if I render out my Markdown. So I'm in my requirements here, and I'm thinking, okay, I want a blog website. When we think about the blog, what's the first thing that we think of when we load the blog? Sign up. We're going to come back to that one. Before we even sign up, what's the first thing we expect to see on a blog?
Title.
The title. Okay, so we can add a title. And we also have the content, right? We need to be able to see all of the posts. But the fact that we just said all of the posts is important, right? Because we could technically design a web page that allowed you to make a post, and that's it. That's the only thing that shows up on that page. but we got to kind of think through in advance, right? We have to say, all right, we need to be able to see multiple blog posts. So I'm going to say homepage needs to be able to show multiple posts. And I'm going to think about that. And I'm going to say, well, what goes into a post? We're thinking MVP here, right? We can always go back and add to this. So we need the title of the post. We need the content of the post. And we also probably want to know the author of the post. Okay. So we're showing all of our posts. We also need an, as Natasha put it, a space to put in that content, right? So we need a create page that allows you to make a post using the information above. Okay. Oh, time date. That's a good one. I forgot that one. Let's add that to the list. Okay. So we create the page. We're using title, content, author, all of that kind of stuff. We create it. That shows up on the homepage. Great. What are the two other data operations we need to handle so that this blog becomes a little bit more functional? Comment and likes aren't quite MVP, right? When we think about minimum viable product, will people use our blog if they can't comment on it? Well, yeah, if people want to read my posts, that will still work. Same goes for likes, right? Yeah, it would be great to get that feedback, but we need a little bit more basic functionality. So I make my blog post and I've got a typo in it. What do I need to be able to do? I need to be able to edit existing posts, right? And if I'm at it and I make a post that's a terrible idea and I'm getting cancel culture over it, I also need to be able to delete existing posts. All right, so if we think back to our movie theater app, this has, we think about it and we go, oh, we just want to be able to select a movie and click on a couple seats and hit the checkout button. That took us 3 days. This going to take us the rest of class tonight, which is only half a class, and another 2 days. What we are going to do is set some stretch goals. And those stretch goals are going to say, should be able to log in with a username and password. We also should be able to limit who can create new posts or new posts, edit, new, edit, or delete posts, right? Only signed in people should be able to do that. And we're also looking at this and I'm thinking, all right, we have a create page, we have our home page. What about this edit and delete? Sometimes when we think about requirements, we want to think about the pages that it's going to take to make those requirements work. So if we've got a create page and we've got the home page, we probably need one more page that's going to let us edit and delete. So I'm going to say admin page that allows us to edit and delete. I save prettier is smart and it goes, oh, this is a markdown file. I know how markdown should work. You'll notice that it indented some things for me and put some line breaks in there. So that is off to a good start. Do we have anything else that we want to capture in our README before we dive into this?
So if we're gonna be able to log in and log out, don't we need a like a database, something kind of?
we need some place to store our data, and that answer will be coming later in class.
Okay.
Yes, you are right. We need some place to be able to save that. And so far, the only place we've been able to save our data is in our JavaScript. And when we refresh the page, all that data goes away, right? So we are going to learn tonight about local storage and how we can use local storage to persist information. Doesn't work for multiple users. So this blog won't work for, hey, I want to ship this up on GitHub, local storage. Well, it says local right in the name, right? It means it's on that person's computer. So this is more of a journal right now that we're creating. Funny that Apple released a journal app or is making a journal app. This is more of a journal so far, right? Because all we're doing is when we make a new post, it saves into our computer, but other people on the internet wouldn't be able to see that. What we will be doing is coming back to this application after we learn how the database works and refactoring this all so that it does use the database and an API and all of that kind of information. So yes, Kenny, we normally think about MVP, and then we can always come back and update that README. And in fact, that's what we will be doing when we are finished this project. We're going to come back to the README and get in the habit of adding additional documentation when the project is done. So we have some hindsight and can make it a little bit easier to understand. Okay, got a good starting point here. Let's go on break, be back at 7:20, and I promise the second half of class, I won't rant on anything. I will code for the full hour straight. See you guys. Put this in the recording. What you get better at is going and saying, all right, I can't do this all on my own, all from scratch. But what I can do is think about the last time I did this. And the last time I did this, there was some data, there was some inner HTML, there was a loop. I can't really write that from scratch, but I can find that project that we did it, read that code, and then try that on my own using my own, you know, in this new project. And eventually you get to the point where you can do that so well that you start memorizing more of it without realizing that you're trying to memorize it. And then you get to the point of being able to do it on your own. With that said, there are some things that at the beginning of the project, I look up every single time. So every time that I have to do authorization, every time I have to do like a login page, I immediately go back to my last project and reference all of that code, and that's what I use. Can I write a for loop from scratch? Can I write most of the code from scratch? Yes. Every time, and we're going to run into this right now, that I need to use a Bootstrap component, we're going to use a card in this project, I go right to the Bootstrap documentation. Could I memorize card and card body and card actions and card text and all of that stuff? Absolutely. Do I? No, that's not important to memorize, right? Because I can go and I can get that card. Same goes for navbar. I never, ever, ever create a navbar from scratch. I go to Bootstrap, I paste in the navbar, and then I style it and get the background and whatever else I need to from there. So I would say don't beat yourself up too much. If you can read the code, if you can document the code, and if you can say, hey, I've got a rough idea of the 30 steps that it took to do this project. And if I had a list of all 30 steps, I could explain it and write that line of code out. That's the level that we want to try and get you to. With all of that said, we are going to dive in to our code. So I am going to head to my index.html. And the first thing is we need a title on the blog, and we need a homepage that shows multiple posts, the title, the content, the author, and the time and date. So that is what we are going to dive into. So I'm going to say, all right, I already have my red hello showing up. So I'm going to get my style.css, put it in the bottom half of the screen. I am going to take out my color red. Why did I do the color red? Just to make sure that my style.css was linked, right? This wasn't linked. I could do the red here, and this would not change to red. So I'm going to take out the color red, And I am going to say, before I even put the title of my blog in, I'm going to think about my container. Do I want it to be container fluid, where it's going to go all the way to the end of the screen? Or on larger screen sizes, do I want to make it so that it's going to center once it gets to a certain screen size? I'm going to go for that. Anything that is text-based usually is better to put in a container instead of a container fluid. Why? Because our eyes have to travel a lot further when they reach the end of the line all the way back. There are studies that show that if it reaches the end of the line and has less to go, even though that is more of a horizontal scroll, it is less stress on the eyes to not have to go all the way back across your monitor, to only have to go over a smaller distance. So because of that, I'm going to use my div class container. And this is a good example of, I can probably use a container and not have to look it up in my Bootstrap code. But there are things that I will need to look up. So I'm going to say H1 Max's blog. Maybe under that, I'm going to put a header row. So I get a little line going on there. Maybe Max's blog is a little too close to the top. So I'm going to do an H1 with some margin on the top of 20 pixels. Okay, that bumps it down a little bit. Let me zoom out to the level that it would actually be. Size-wise, I think that's okay. So now I can say, all right, how do I want to display my posts? Well, let's go back to our requirements and look at that. We've got a couple pieces of information: title, content, author, and time and date. And I know that there needs to be multiple posts. So the first thing that pops in my mind is, what if we do a table? Well, a table is great, but I think it's going to be too much data, right? It's going to be compressing it all on the screen. I want a more visual way to lay all of that out. So I'm going to head to my Bootstrap documentation. Nope, I already have it open, getbootstrap.com. And I'm going to scroll down, and this isn't really a layout issue. This is a component. I'm looking for a component that would work well here. So I am going to go down and I'm going to look at all of these options, and I'm going to go to my card. And I'm going to scroll down and look at this, and I'm like, this could work. I don't really have an image to go in, but I do want to have like a read more button so that they can read about the post. This could be a little summary of the post, and then the title. Maybe we adjust this a little bit more to have all the information that we're looking for. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to copy this entire div class card. And when I'm thinking about it, I really want 3 cards to show across, right? So I can get different posts in here. And then from there, we can always adjust. So I'm going to come down to my index HTML. I'm going to make a new div ID with posts. I don't know that I'm going to need that ID, but for right now, I'm just going to group it in there so that I can access it more easily. And I'm going to put a class on that of row. Then, because I want 3 columns, I'm going to do a call for. Why? 12 divided by 3 equals 4. So I'm going to paste that in. I'm going to save. And I get a broken image. And again, I took this from card, this first code HTML snippet. That's where I took it from. Okay, so I get my first card in there. I delete out my image because we said, hey, our blog posts aren't going to have images. Then I want to be careful with my div soup because we've got, look at all of these closing divs here. That's getting a little insane. So I'm going to click on this div. That's this div. And I'm going to say end of posts row. This is going to be the end of my call for. And then this is the end of my card. You can take a break in 1 second. I'm going to take this call for, and I'm still going to click on my div and make sure I know where it lines up. I'm going to copy it and paste it 2 more times. Get my card showing up. I expand this and I'm like, well, what's going on with this gap here? That's not really what I want. I want the card to take up the full width. Well, if you notice, Bootstrap was trying to set us up with a width. We don't really want it to be a fixed width. We want it to automatically expand to fit in the column. So I'm going to take out all 3 of those style widths. And now when I shrink it down, they stay in there. And when I go all the way open, they also look right. Okay, pausing there. I know that was a lot of code. The good news was it was a lot of copy and paste, right? What did we do? We set up our div, we put a class row on it, and then we said we want 3 cards to show across. So we put them all in a col4. Once they were in a col4, we took this entire div exactly from our Bootstrap documentation right here. We took out the width 18 rem, and then we deleted the image, and everything else was just a direct copy and paste. We threw some comments on here so we knew what was the end of the card and what was the end of the col4. And now what our final interface should look like is something like this.
Mine is expanding all the way down. I don't know why.
Share screen.
Mm,
So I think you've got a runaway H1. Maybe not. Oh, go to your, let me just request remote. So you've got your body font size set to 50 px.
oh me. Okay. Oh damn me. I mean, okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Oh right.
Anyone else need help?
Oh yes.
Oh, there you go.
Just one question. So we took the image part out, right?
We did, yes. Kenny, glad to hear that you got a capstone idea here. More interfaces we build, the more inspiration you draw from. Anyone need 1 more minute before we keep going? Okay.
Wait, so I'm sorry, I'm catching up because of that whole that thing happened. So once you put 3 cards in a row, how did you get the gap in between? Did you put
Make sure you take out the width, which is a style on each one of the cards. And then as long as you have them all in a col4, it should line up properly.
okay, perfect. All the width and col4. Sure. Where the hell did the other one go? Okay, here you go. All right.
So before we can get into any of our JavaScript, I like to have our interface mostly complete, right? Because JavaScript always adds a layer of complexity. So I want to make sure that it's all going to look right in my HTML before I write a single line of JavaScript, other than maybe a console log. So Quota, what's up?
I'm trying to figure out what I did. Mine's are not showing up like yours.
Share screen. Okay, let me request remote. And so usually this becomes an issue of just div soup and being able to keep track of that. So you've got your row, you've got your col, you've got a card and a card. So we've got too many cards. Let's take one of those cards out and say this div is closing off that div. This div is closing off this div. And then I think we just ended up with too many cards here. So let's take that one out. Let's take this one out. And let's save. And Prettier's still mad at us. So we've got some closing divs we got to think through. So opening div lines up with, I think that one's lining up too far down. So if we close this div, that div, nope. This div should be lining up with this div. Div, okay. Div. One missing down here. This div is matching up. All right, let's see if we get lucky. If I take one of these out, Prettier runs. Okay. See if that fixes it in the browser.
It does.
Okay. So the trick there is be very, very careful on your copy and paste. You'll notice that whenever I do my copy and paste, I always click on the final div and I make sure that that lines up with my opening div. So two important things when you copy and paste. One, your opening and closing divs. And then two, make sure you're careful where you're pasting it because you don't want to paste it outside of this row or you don't want to accidentally paste this col4 in another col4. So that's all the div soup and just practice of keeping track of it.
Thank you.
Anyone
Max,
else? Yeah.
if I want to change the color of the cards, the text content within it, do I target the bootstrap or do I target the body?
You could target either the whole card or the card body.
Okay.
And as long as you don't mind changing all of the cards for your whole site. So we won't be using cards anywhere else, but if you were using a card somewhere else, sometimes it's better to put your own class on it than target the bootstrap class.
So like with a class ID?
You could just add another class of your own. Like if you wanted to call this like my card body, then you could target my card body and put this on multiple places.
Okay.
And then I only put it on 2, but you could say, you know, my card body is going to be fuchsia.
Got yeah.
And
Okay.
that would change it.
Thank you.
Corwin, what's up?
For some reason, all my stuff is like lining vertically instead of
Seriously?
horizontally. Okay.
Okay, let me request remote. So no Prettier issues, which is good. That makes me think it's not div soup. You do have your bootstrap in. You've got your class row, your col4. And then what do we do down here? This div says we're done with this row, onto the next row. So what we want to do is we want to take out that, and we want to take out that. And our Prettier is still not mad with us. See if that fixes the problem. Cool. Anyone else? Oh, Corwin, did I break it?
I got 2 of them to fix, but I'm gonna try the same thing you just did for the first 2.
Okay, yeah, just check your divs and make sure it's all in one row instead of 3 separate rows. Okay, so now, before we're completely done, I want to get one card that doesn't have boilerplate in it, right? I want to get one card that is looking exactly the way that I want it to. So I'm going to go off, I'm going to find my first card, and I'm going to say my first post. And then down here, I'm going to say some short example, let's say some short example of the content of this post. And then I'm going to change my go somewhere to a read more. Okay, it's a good start, but if I go back to my README, I'm going to throw it down here. My README says that it needs to show the title, got that. The content, got that. The author and the time and date, like, okay, don't got that. So maybe what I will do is I'm going to change my P tag to a div tag, because I really want to use this card text. Then I'm going to put my text in its own P tag. And everything looks the same. But now that, because I've got this in a div, I can do a little bit more. So I'm going to do a div, and I'm going to say by Max Matthews. And then I'm going to do another div, and I'm going to say 3 min ago. Okay. Don't hate that, but maybe a little bit too much. Kind of bold, kind of a lot going on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a class on this called author, and a class on this called timestamp. And I'm going to target the author, and I'm going to make it a font size of, let's say, 14 pixels. And I'll make my timestamp font size as well of 12 pixels. Okay, that's feeling good. Let's see, can I do maybe a color on this of light gray? Too light gray. So use regular gray. And then maybe a color on this of, is there a dark gray? Ooh, got lucky on that one. Didn't know that existed. Don't like it. Just leave that one in black. Maybe I will take a look and see in the inspect. If I open this up a little bit more and go to the bottom of it, I can see there's a margin of 8 pixels on here. Maybe that's what I don't like. Maybe I'll target the H5 and do a margin on the bottom of 0 pixels. Let me target the card title instead. There we go. And then on the timestamp, maybe let's put some margin on the bottom of that of 5 pixels. 10 pixels? 10 pixels. All right. Trial and error, but do we see the difference that it looked from this compared to this? Yes, that is a very minor difference, but when we're looking at this, all of these little things add up to a much better experience. Just grouping these 3 pieces of information together and playing around with color and playing around with margin are what get us this nice cohesive experience that make it feel like that one card is all working together. I'm gonna pause there, let you guys catch up. I only did this to the first card. I did not make the changes to the other cards. That's okay. We're going to leave them as is.
Yeah, I lied. For some reason my card is not.
Share your screen. I knew I got off too easy. Ooh, okay. So we got something going on with the last one. Take me over to your code. Okay, request. Okay, so div for your second call is closing all the way down here. And it really should be closing up here. That do it? Okay. I was close.
I was deleting divs. I deleted too many divs.
You had the right number of divs, because if you didn't, Prettier wouldn't run. It was just where that closing div was. So it's kind of thinking about it of like the Russian dolls, the nesting dolls, right? Wonder if that's anyway. Think about it as row, column, card, and we want to close that out before we go on to the next one. Brandy, what are you shaking your head at?
Nothing.
Kenny, we can reuse classes. We can't reuse IDs. Which is why 99% of the time that you see a Bootstrap selector, it will be a class and not an ID, because we want to be able to reuse it. Anyone need help getting their interface looking, just having their first card done? Okay. So I'm going to go back to my requirements. I'm going to say homepage needs to be able to show multiple posts, title, content, author, time, date. I got that down. I'm feeling good about that. Now I come down here and I say create page that allows you to make a post using the information above. Okay, well, we are breaking barriers, people. We are going to create our first project with multiple links, with multiple pages. So I'm going to go all the way down, and this is the end of my posts row. I want to confirm that this div is the end of my container up here. It is. So I'm going to say end of container, and I want to be inside my container, but outside my posts. So that means that I am inside my final closing div, and I'm going to make an ahref that says new, new post.html, and the link is going to go to new post. Now, who should be able to make a new post? Only signed in people, but pump our brakes here a little bit, right? We want to get new post working. We want to get create, read, update, and delete working. And once we do, then we can go back in and add in our authentication. Why? Because we said that is a stretch goal. We said we're only going to try and do that if we can get the rest of the site working. So I've got my new post. I linked to new post.html. That means I probably need a new post.html, right? So I'm going to go over to my files. I'm going to create my new post.html. I'm going to throw my boilerplate in there. And I'm going to say, hey, we need a new post. We need to go back in because God knows I can't make a website without Bootstrap. I'm going to go take this whole link tag. And while I'm at it, I'll also take my style.css. I'm going to copy that, head back over to my new post, paste that sucker in, and save. Then in my body, I'll throw an H1 that says new post. I save, I come over, I click my new post button, and I get my new post. What rule did I break? We're using Bootstrap, so my content should be in a container. So I'll throw that in there. I'll use that HR to be consistent with my homepage. And now I'm going to save. I'm going to say, okay, what do I need on my new post? Well, I have to keep track of title, content, author, and time and date. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm realizing that I need something on my homepage that's going to show me a little bit of the content, but not all of the content. So we've got two ways of handling that. We could either make a tagline, or we could automatically shorten the part of the content so it only shows the first couple characters of it. I think I like that idea more. So I'm going to keep going the way it is, but I need a form that's going to let me type in the title, the content, the author, all of that kind of information, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my Bootstrap. I'm going to go over to the forms, and I'm going to go to the overview. And I'm going to scroll down here, and this is a basic form that I've got going on. But instead of just copying and pasting this blankly, I'm going to scroll down a little bit and see if there is a shorter example. So I'm going to look under form control, and this has my label and my input all in one class. So that's what I'm going to take. I'm going to come copy this first one. Actually, I'm going to take both of them while I'm at it. I'm going to copy both of them, come back over. I'm going to throw all of this in a tag called form. That's going to help me down the road for the JavaScript of being able to hook into all of that. And I'm going to paste in what I've got there. So I'm going to update some of this. I'm going to say the title, and that is for the title. And the ID in the for has to match the ID in our input. I don't need a placeholder, so I can go ahead and take that out. And my input type is going to be text. And keep going there, right? I'm going to say for content. And I can't change these classes because these classes are what Bootstrap is doing to style everything for us. And I'm going to say content. And then my ID has to match what's in the for. And everything looks fine there. The author, I need to keep track of now because we don't have anyone signed in. So I'm going to take this div MB3, copy it and paste it, and say author, author, author. And then finally, I get to my time and date. And this is something that, well, the computer knows what time it is, right? When I make a new blog post on anyone else's site, I don't have to put in the time. The time automatically gets generated for me. So we're going to leave that up to our JavaScript to do that heavy lifting. So I look at my site, and I've got my title, my content, and the author section. Pausing there to give you guys a second to catch up. The most important thing on your code here is going to be that these three IDs say author, say content, and say title. Those IDs we are going to use later. So if you have the example name in there, take that example name out. Make sure you've got your ID set for all three of them.
Max, I'm just checking. I just have a link on the side of like my first post. Is that like where should
This one,
Mine's is a little over to the left is,
make sure that on your index, your new post button is inside the final div because that's the container, and the container is what's pushing it over a little bit more. And then on your new post page, make sure that everything that you've created is inside the div class container.
thank you.
Yep. And if you still can't figure it out, let me know. So our new post should have this nice form. Anyone need help?
I just need 1 minute.
Sure. Shay, what's up?
Yeah, it says it cannot get new post.html. I don't know what I did wrong. I don't know if you can see the screen or not.
Oh, it just came through. Okay. Let's head over to your VS Code. You might have to stop your screen share and restart it because I think you started. Oh, there we go. Never mind. This is my code, not your code. This is your code. And what you managed to do is create your new post.html in this folder called .vs code. So all we need to do is take this and drag it outside that folder. So we'll move that, and then I can just delete this folder for you. Trash. Okay, and now if you go back to your Chrome, it should be there. You might have to refresh.
That worked. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Okay. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna make some title, and I'm gonna say I'm an awesome writer, and I'm gonna say Elon Musk is writing this, and crap. Well, how do I make it go? I need a button. So I'm gonna go back over and make sure I'm still inside my form tag here. And I'm going to say button, and the type is going to be submit because we're trying to submit the form. And I'm going to say create post. And I go, dear God, that is ugly. So I go back to my Bootstrap. I go down to buttons, and down in my buttons, I see this nice styled one. Although I think the green one is a little bit more addy. So I'm going to go look, and the green one is called success. So I'm going to take this whole class button success, copy it, head back over to my button, paste that class right on there. And now I've got my lovely create post button. Okay. Now we run into the tricky part. So we got to think through JavaScript wise, what are we trying to do here? We're trying to say when this form is submitted, pause. We know how to do that, right? We know how to say, hey, when this thing happens, that thing is an event. So I'm going to go up to my form and I'm going to use a new event called on submit. And I'm going to say on submit, create post. And that's going to get the event that happens. Okay, if I'm creating my post here, That means that I can go to my JavaScript, take out my hello world because I don't need that anymore. And I can say const create post is going to get an event, and I'm going to just log out button clicked. I save, I come over, I type something in, I hit create post, and nothing happens. Why is nothing happening? Got my on submit, create
Return.
post,
Oh,
create post. What was your guess?
we have no return on that.
Don't need to return anything, right? It should just console log something now.
Hmm.
It should be in the console. I'm in the console, and when I hit create post, nothing happens down here.
Are we missing the semicolons on there?
Nope.
Okay.
Are we missing our link to the HTML, the get
We
element?
sure are. Good catch. What we did in our index.html, we put our script.js in here, but look what we're missing in our new post. We don't have our script in here. So Bootstrap is obvious, right? When we start using a container and we start using the button and the form and it doesn't look right, we can go, oh, this is a new page. We forgot our Bootstrap. Very easy to forget, hey, we also need our script tag over here. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And we need one other thing. When we submit a form, the way that it's set up is the browser thinks the form is getting submitted to a server. And we aren't doing anything server side yet, right? We're saying, no, we want the control of this. So what we do, because the form by default refreshes the page, we're telling it to prevent the default. We're saying, don't refresh the page when you submit the form, just hold off, go run my JavaScript instead. So that's what this event prevent default does. So I save, I type some stuff in, and I hit create post, and now I get my button clicked.
Max, 1 second. Can you back up and explain what you just said real quick?
Yeah, so two things. One, we created this new post.html, but we forgot to include our script tag here. So no matter what we put down in our script.js, it wasn't going to run unless we linked in the script. That was one. Number two is that even when we have the script tag in, if we don't put this event prevent default in and we create the post, the whole page looks like it just refreshed, right? It kind of did. The default browser action when we submit a form is to submit that information to the server. But we don't have a server. We don't know anything about backend yet. What we do know is that we want our JavaScript to run instead of the whole page refreshing and clearing out the form. And so what we do is we say, hey, when that create post event happens, prevent the default action of the event happening, which is refreshing the page. And whenever you work with forms, you always want to remember this prevent default. Basically, we're saying if we're not submitting the information to the server, prevent the default action of that page refresh so that we can handle it on our own. Penny, share your screen.
So you're saying
So go ahead and scroll down and just hit the create post.
yeah, when I click on create post, it just refreshes it.
Okay, so let me see your code. Script.js. Your form tag is missing the on submit create post.
Oh, at the top.
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. Anyone else need help?
That helped me too, because mine was saying the value for the key width is invalid, but I was missing that part too. In my
That will
form.
do it. Anyone else need help?
So what is it supposed to be doing once we click the button?
It just should say button clicked in the console. Yeah, important you got your console open so you can see the output. And if nothing happens or it looks like the page is refreshing, something's not right.
I get a button click, but like right after it just refreshes.
Okay, so check to make sure you've got your event prevent default above as the very first thing in your console. Make sure you've got your event in the parameters, and then make sure your on submit on your form tag looks like the on submit on my form tag. And if all of that looks right, share your screen. Asthma, that's okay. We haven't told it to do anything yet. All we told it to do was don't refresh the screen and log this out. So that is okay that it's not doing anything. The fact that it's not refreshing is actually progress. Now that's the next step, is telling it what to do. Warren, you need help?
I'm gonna share my screen.
Yep, go for it.
It felt like I did incorrectly.
So
It's like it's,
I don't see any problem there. Let's go to your JavaScript. Take that
I
out.
don't know if that was.
No, it should not be commented out. It should be in there.
Oh, it should be in there.
Yep.
That's probably why I was freaking out then. I can't click this. There we go. Okay.
Sorry, I was showing an example and I commented it out to show what would happen if it wasn't working.
I like looked over and I saw it commented out and I was like, what the heck?
Sorry.
No,
Anyone
you're
else
good.
need help?
I just have a quick question. Why is our parentheses blank for the prevent default? I just want to, every time I see the parentheses, I feel like there should be something in them. So when there's not, I'm just wondering like, which ones we leave blank. And I know we do like the math random, we leave that blank. Is this sort of like the same thing for it just knows what to do based off of?
Same exact thing. What the parentheses are telling it is to actually run the prevent default method, right? So if we do something like const say hi equals a function that says console.log hello there. Don't follow along, just an example. Well, if I say console.log say hi, what we get is, oh, in order to say hi, here's the function that you do. And we're like, no, we don't care about the code in the function. We want you to actually run the function. We want you to go say hi. Well, that's why we come in here. And when we put our parentheses in, it says hello there. These parentheses are telling it, no, I don't want you to go log out what this whole thing equals. I want you to actually go run the code that's inside of there. Now, why do we need parentheses, or why do we leave them empty? Because right now, hello there doesn't need any additional information to run. But if we wanted it to say hello there to your name, I could say hello there and add in a name. That name is going to come in from the parameters. And when I say hi, I can say Max. I guess I don't even need this console log here. Or I could say hi to Tara. Now, both of those come out. Why do I need information in these parentheses? Because our say hi our say hi function needs additional information to know how to run differently each time. The same goes for this prevent default. This prevent default doesn't need to know any additional information because it's built into the browser, because it doesn't need to be told how to run. We just want it to run it. So that's what the parentheses are saying. But if we did something like console.log, it's like, well, I need more information. I need to know what you want me to log out. That's why we put these in the parentheses. Same goes for our create post. We need more details about the event. So we have that as a parameter so that we can use it. Does that help?
Yes.
Shay, and then Rain, I'll come to you next. What's up?
I'm gonna share my screen. I put everything down, but on the console it doesn't say button click. So
Okay, let's take a look. Create posts, button clicked, event, prevent default. Okay, let's look at your HTML. Create post on submit. Let's look at your button. Type is not button, type is submit.
oh, okay, that's what I messed up.
Good thing too, because I was running out of things that could be wrong.
Yep, that was it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Rain, what's up?
I know it's all about knowing what the layout should be and understanding those concepts, but I do have a question regarding the styling
Sure.
of the create post. So I'm looking at my CSS. I don't see anything that references it being green with white lettering. We did something a little similar to this on Free Code Camp when we did a registration form. We had a submit button, and like we had to put in REMs and all this type of stuff. Why didn't we have to do that with this? And I can show an example in the chat of what we had to put.
Because it's coming from our Bootstrap.
Oh, yeah.
So Free Code Camp is not using Bootstrap, so you have to do it all by hand. The kind of interesting thing, though, is that if you inspect this create button element and snoop over what's going on over here, all of a sudden you see this BTN success and you see the color of it. And then if you snoop down a little bit further, you can see the color is white, the text line is center, the vertical line is middle, right? These are all properties that you may have used in Free Code Camp to style it on your own. And then if you keep going down, eventually you'll see that there's padding of 6px on the top and padding on the left and the right. All of that is coming in because Bootstrap in our buttons.scss file, this is what Bootstrap is providing for us. They made all of that CSS for us. So all we need to know is what classes to use.
You're absolutely correct. And on my inspect element, I do show that. And again, that's the reason why we use Bootstrap to help minimize all the typing. Thank you.
Now we could, there are times that I start a project from scratch and I go, all right, I don't want to use Bootstrap. I want to make my own CSS framework. And eventually at some point, I'll show you what our interface at work looks like. And it doesn't look like Bootstrap at all. Why? Because we've got a designer on our team who said, I want every button in the interface to look like this, and basically built our own little mini version of Bootstrap. So whenever we want a button, we call it the Tuzag button, and that comes in and is pre-styled and is already made. So as you work on bigger apps, you can design out your own elements. And there are other CSS frameworks that you can use as well. One very popular one is called Tailwind CSS. And then Material UI is another one in case you're interested in others.
Once you use Bootstrap, can you go in and edit certain fine tune certain things like that? Or do you can? Okay.
Yeah. So if in my style.css, I'm like, oh no, my button success is going to have a background color of purple. If I save that, now I've got a purple button. So there, it is possible to override Bootstrap. You just want to do it with caution because you don't want all of a sudden all of your button successes to turn purple when you only meant to do it on this page.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I am in my JavaScript. I've got button clicked. What's the logical next step here? When I'm making a new post, I kind of need to know what got typed in here, right? Well, we've done that before. We can say document.getElementById and get the author and get the content and get the title, but all of this is happening because we're submitting the form. Wouldn't it make sense that there's an easier way to get access to the elements that are in the form that we're getting submitted? There is. We can say console.log event.target.elements. I save that. I come over here. I'm going to type something in. I hit create post. I look in my console and great googly moogly, there are a bunch of inputs and stuff in there. I'm like, all right, we need to narrow that down a little bit. Go find the title for me and go give me the value of the title. I save, I come over, I type in A, I hit create post, and I get A. Say BC, I hit create post, and I get A, BC. Okay, well, if I'm getting all of that data, I need to group this data together because it's not just the title and the content and the author. What kind of data format should I use to group this information together? I was hoping someone would guess array. Why would we not want to use an array?
Because we'd rather have like key value pairs. This is the title and this is what the person entered.
Exactly. We
Object.
want the key values, right? When we reference this content, when we say post and we get out the title, we don't want to say post bracket 0 because that would be index 0, right? And then hopefully the content is in the first index. We could get away with that, but it's not quite descriptive, right? I would much rather say post.title than post bracket 0. So Kenny, you are right. We want to use an object. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say const post, and it's an object, so it's going to get curly braces. And what am I going to do? I'm going to store the title in a key called title, and I'm going to get that from the element's title value. I am then going to go get the content and store that in the key called content and get that from the event target elements content dot value. And finally, the author is going to come from my event target elements author value. And what's the last piece of information we said that we were going to store in this?
Max, you have a typo in content. Target.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Time. That was the last one. So I'm going to call it timestamp. And how do we generate a time? Just like we can use math.random and other features like that, the computer knows what a date is. And what we want to store is the date.now. We don't want a date in the future. All we want is the current date. I save that and I'm like, okay, I think all of that's working. But to really test it, I need to console.log out my post and make sure my object has all the right information in it. I save, I say title, I say some content, and I say some author, and I hit create post. And what I should see, excuse me, is the author, the content, this weird number as a timestamp, and the title. Any of these are null or undefined, make sure you don't have typos over here like I did.
Max, one more, can you go back one more time and just explain why we use object?
Yeah, so we used object because when I pull this information back out, when I want to load up my cards on my homepage, I want to be able to say, hey, go get me the post title, go get me the post content, go get me the post author, right? I could store that all in an array, but then I would have to know that 0 always holds the title, 1 always holds the content, 2 always holds the author. Right? So an array would work. We could make that work and it would do the exact same thing. But when we're thinking about when we want to access those properties, it would be easier to access it with a key, the string of, what it's holding, as opposed to the indexes. So whenever we have a list where it doesn't really matter what kind of information is we're storing, they're all kind of related, that's when we want to use an array. And arrays do have a place in this project. We're going to get to that very beginning of class tomorrow. But for now, we want to store it all in an object because we want to reference it by the key as opposed to the index. It does not matter the order of an object. In fact, for a very long time, objects were not ordered in JavaScript at all. And now order is kind of enforced, but not really enforced. So the order of an object, 99.9% of the time does not matter, excuse me.
So even if you have it in the timestamp on the bottom in your JavaScript, why wouldn't it show up in the bottom in the console?
Because objects don't keep track of order of keys. So it's kind of whatever order the JavaScript writes it into memory is the order that it comes out in. Now that might be that, let's try something. If I put in a key here with a test and hit create post, a key does come out on the top. So it's kind of interesting because up here, you notice the order is the order that I created the object in. But then when I expand it, Google automatically sorted them all alphabetically for me.
Yeah,
So
they're alphabetical.
yeah. So I guess I learn something new every day. Apparently Google sorts them alphabetically when you expand the key, but the order is supposed to stay the same in the JavaScript. That gets into a gray area though of JavaScript that I try to stay out of. Goggin, what's up?
Mine is not logging out on the console for some reason. It's saying error, like type error, but I can't find anywhere.
So we are going to stop here for tonight. Tomorrow, we dive into a new concept called local storage. We're going to learn about parsing content, how to store information in local storage, and how we can build out our functionality with our edit, delete, and then we get into our login page. So lots of fun stuff coming down the pipeline. Have an awesome evening. I'm going to stick around and help anyone who does not have their post logging out. But if you got it logging out, feel free to head out. And don't worry, Sequota, we've got a whole nother day on this project tomorrow. So that is coming down the pipeline. Goggin, go ahead and share your screen, and then Asma, I'll come to you next. Okay, cannot read undefined reading value on line number 5. So event target elements title value, nothing looks wrong there. So let's go to your new post.html and make sure the ID on the title is added and spelled correctly.
Oh, I can't. Why?
You can just grab the window and scoot that down. Okay. So input, look at your ID for title. What do you notice about it?
Right here?
Uh-huh.
Oh, shit. All right. Was
And
it
while
that?
you're at it, check your other IDs.
Oh, nope. Okay.
Well, notice that error is now on line 6, not on line 5.
All right. That was a complete typo. Okay. All right. Let's see.
There you go.
Works. Thank you.
Oh, good. Figured it out. Any other questions for tonight?
Can you give a quick rundown real quick of the events this week? Because I missed one of them, I think. The one of the open houses. I don't know which day that was.
Wednesday, we have Wednesday Community Cup 9 a.m. at the Tech Garden. That's the kind of entrepreneurially focused one.
Awesome.
Wednesday is co-working day at Common Space. And that's at lunchtime. We're touring TCG Player. If you're interested in attending that, and I will mention this in class tomorrow because I forgot, sign up on Meetup and you can message Jay Ballounis in the Syracuse IO Slack and just give him a heads up because he needs name and email address just to register people for the TCG tour and free lunch. And then third one is Open Hack on Thursday, and that's what we're taking off class for Thursday, 6 p.m. at Common Space. And then Rock on Tech the following Thursday if you signed up for that.
Okay, thank you. I didn't
problem.
realize that. All right. Sorry.
All good. Any other questions?
No, good night.
Have a good one, everyone. See ya.